everyone, my name is Taliesin Govanen and welcome back to Tarot with Taliesin. Today I thought we'd look at the Minor Arcana, more specifically the elements associated with each suit in the tarot. Now, just as an introduction for people who aren't quite as familiar with the tarot, there are two sections to a deck of tarot cards, the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. The Major Arcana is where you find cards like the Lovers and the Magician and the Tower and all of those type of things. The Minor Arcana is where you find the suits, the swords, the cups, the pentacles, and the wands, or whatever they use for the pentacles and the wands. Different decks use different things. But they really all go along with the same elemental correspondences. Or do they? Let's take a closer look at this. Most of the meanings and interpretations that go along with tarot cards, at least the ones that we use today, most of them date back to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, who codified many of the rules about tarot at the turn of the last century. This is going to be important as we go through the different suits. But even the books that seem to be very, very far away from the Golden Dawn, most of them get their basic tarot correspondences from the Rider-Waite deck, and A.E. Waite was a member of the Golden Dawn. Not my favorite member, but he was a member nonetheless, and he used a lot of the same correspondences that the Golden Dawn kind of set down for tarot. Before the Golden Dawn, all tarot reading was pretty much what people would call intuitive tarot reading today. That is where there were no fixed meanings for any cards, and it was whatever you figured it out to be, whatever you felt it was at the time. The Golden Dawn, though, actually, they're the ones who corresponded the tarot deck with the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, not the Jewish Kabbalah, but the ceremonial magical Kabbalah that started in the Middle Ages. Any person who studied either one of those Kabbalahs should be able to tell you that they're really not that much alike. But I digress. Another thing that the Golden Dawn did was ascribe different elemental meanings to the different suits, and that really does affect how these cards are interpreted. In fact, many intuitive tarot readers that I know to this day still use some form of elemental correspondence for the different suits to guide what direction their interpretations for those cards are going to take. Some don't, but I know a lot who do. So let's go ahead and start with the two suits that everybody can agree on what elements go with what. Let's start with the suit of cups. Now, the suit of cups goes with the element of water. And if you've seen my workshop that I put up about writing your own quarter calls, you'll know that the element of water is associated with emotion, with intuition, with psychic abilities, with spirit communication, and that sort of thing. So when reading the cups, it goes along with it. For example, in the system of tarot reading that I use, fives belong to the Hall of Karma. And so the Five of Cups would be something that's happening karmically because of an emotion that you've had, because of a psychic intuition that you've had, the karmic results of that particular element. So Five of Cups is the karmic results from water. That's the method I use. But if you're doing readings with cups, just know that, they have to do with emotions or intuition. Now, which one for a particular reading? That usually depends on the other cards around it. So if you're doing tarot magic that has to do with emotions or intuition, definitely use cups cards for that, because it goes along quite well with it. The other suit where everybody can agree on the elemental correspondence for it is the suit of pentacles. Now, in some decks, this can be the suit of plates or the suit of discs or the suit of coins. But the deck that I use uses pentacles, so that's just how I'll refer to it. If your deck uses something else, then just mentally substitute whatever your deck uses whenever I say pentacles. But the suit of pentacles is associated with the element of earth. And the element of earth has to do with the physical world, physical manifestations. So health, prosperity, fertility, all of these things belong to the element of earth. So let's say you get the 10 of Pentacles in your reading. Now, in the methodology I use, 10s have to do with the physical manifestation of something. So the 10 of Pentacles would be the physical manifestation of prosperity or health or fertility, that kind of thing. If you have people who are trying to conceive a baby and they get the 10 of Pentacles as their turnout card, you can tell them it's probably going to be good news, that kind of thing. Here's where things get tricky. Now, in order to explain just why things are this tricky and how we got to this place, I need to explain about the concept of blinds. Now, I'm not talking about the blinds that you hang over your windows to keep the neighbors from peeping in. A blind is something that ceremonial magical lodges and traditions used to use to keep the wrong people from finding out information too early. For example, if you had a ceremonial magical tradition that said that, that a pine cone is the symbol for male fertility, but you don't want this bit of information to get out, even though it might. So what you do is you tell everyone around you that the pine cone stands for female fertility in your tradition. And then once somebody gets initiated or they get to the correct degree, you can say, that bit about the pine cone being for women. No. That was just a blind because you need to know that the pine cone is a symbol of male fertility, but you couldn't find out until you hit this degree. That kind of thing. Now, you may think that this sounds kind of childish or weird, but there's a method to the madness. I mean, most of these ceremonial magical systems were incredibly complex things, and to learn them took a long time and a lot of study. Now, as someone who has taught other people mystical things before, a lot of times when we're coming up with ways of how to teach this stuff, we kind of do it by layers. You give them the most basic stuff first, and you give them a little more depth, and a little more depth, and a little more depth. Kind of like you're building a house. You start out with your foundation, and then you just go up from there. So a lot of these things that were blinds were things that it's not like they didn't want you to know. They just didn't want you to know right now. You needed to master this other stuff first before you got to the stuff that they're hiding behind obscurities and blinds and that sort of thing. Well, one of the blinds that the Golden Dawn used to make sure that their initiates information didn't get leaked out was the blind of the swords and the wands in the tarot deck. Now, if you're a person in the higher degrees of the Golden Dawn, then you would associate fire with swords and wands with air. However, if you weren't in one of the higher degrees, if you're in one of the lower degrees, or not even in the Golden Dawn, they would tell you that wands were fire and that swords were air. And when people like A.E. Waite and Aleister Crowley wrote books about the tarot either after or before they put out their own decks, they would put the Golden Dawn blind in there because their own initiatory oaths forbade them from revealing the stuff from the higher degrees. So they couldn't tell people the actual correspondences. They had to pass on the Golden Dawn blinds. And to this day, you'll still see a lot of books and a lot of people who say that wands are fire and swords are air. But I'm not one of those people. Now, it may have helped that the person who influenced my tarot reading a great deal, the late Ellen Cannon Reed, who did the original Witch's Tarot for Llewellyn, she used the actual correspondences and not the Golden Dawn blind. She always had fire for swords and wands for air. And the logic is that fire would consume a wand. It would destroy it. But fire only makes a sword stronger through the forging process. And so it just makes more sense to put swords with fire. And also when you consider that wands are associated with wood, and wood comes from trees, and What's an association we have with trees? Wind blowing through the branches of these trees. Wind blowing through the branches that will later be turned into wands. So it makes sense. Now I am going to talk about swords being fire and wands being air for this reason. If the way that you read tarot dictates that wands are fire and swords are air, and you don't want to change it, and you don't really have to, then just go ahead and swap out what I say for swords with wands and vice versa. However, if you've never tried reading the tarot with swords being fire and wands being air, I'd say give it a shot. You never know, you might just find something new that's going to help your tarot readings improve. Let's take a look at the Two of Swords for an example. Now, in the methodology that I use, twos are where things just start to gain a little energy behind it. It's not so nebulous anymore. Things start moving at twos. And it's not moving enough for you to notice yet, but it's starting to move. So the Two of Swords would be the beginning of will. The beginning, just where your will starts to, start to give you the idea of motivating you. Such as, let's say you're procrastinating on something and you get the Two of Swords in your reading. That means that the energy's coming. It's just not quite there yet, but it's starting to move in that direction. That kind of thing. Or the passion is moving in that direction, or the will is moving in that direction. You basically take whatever you interpret that particular card number to be and associate that with the elemental, and boom, you get your correspondence. And finally, let's take a look at wands. Now again, in the way that I read, wands are associated with air. And air is associated with thoughts, intellect, ideas, communication. So, for example, let's say you're trying to come up with some new ideas. And, you're not sure which idea to go with, and you're trying to come to a conclusion. And let's say you get the Nine of Wands in a reading. Well, nines are where things are almost there, but they're not quite there yet. Kind of like the idea of, a really, really pregnant woman. The baby is almost here, but not quite yet. The baby's fully formed, but it's not quite there yet. That's a 9, where something is almost there, but it's not quite yet. So if you have the Nine of Wands, the idea or the thought that's going to be the solid one, the one that you should really go on, it's almost there. You've almost got it to that point, but it's not quite. That kind of thing. That's how you could plug the element of air into something like the Suit of Wands. And that's it for my short introduction on the suits of the Minor Arcana and their elemental correspondences. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos on the tarot coming up. I've got some planned, but I also want to hear your ideas. Go ahead and leave me a comment down below and tell me what kind of stuff you'd like me to cover on the tarot. I've been reading this thing for over 30 years, so I've got a few tips and tricks up my sleeve that you might find useful. Also, while you're leaving your comment, don't forget to like this video and subscribe and hit that little bell so you can get all the notifications when I put out a new video. Again, my name is Taliesin Govanen. Thank you for spending this time with me, and may you only see good things ahead.